Welcome back to this evening's Planning Committee. We're now going to go on to agenda item 8, planning application, land south of Ham Hill. Madeleine Mead, Principal Planner, will be presenting this application. So over to you, Madeleine.
Thank you, Chair. This is a reserved matters application for up to 450 dwellings at land south of Ham Lane, formerly Gibraltar Farm. The original outline application was allowed at appeal in 2017, and an outline application was applied for and approved again in 2018. The access into the site was approved as part of the outline application, and this reserved matters is for the details of appearance, layout, scale and landscaping. This application has been in since 2020 and was submitted by the original landowner. The land has since been sold to a developer and the whole development amended to suit the current developer's design. If I can just draw members' attention to the supplementary agenda. This amends the approved plans condition and adds further condition, and it also adds a section on air quality. And although not on the supplementary agenda, I would also like to make further amendments to the approved plans condition by removing all drawings dated 30th of June 2026 and amending drawing number 104 revision E to revision F, received 16th of July 2026. So this is the application site outlined in red, and you've got Capson Country Park to the north, the future Lidsyn development to the southeast, and the Lawswood Estate along here. It's an aerial view of the site. This is Elm Court Estate here, Lawswood Leisure Centre. This is Lawswood Estate, future Lidsyn development, and you've got Hempstead Valley Shopping Centre. Some site photos. So this is a footpath up by the top of Northdane Way, and then you've got the footpath going down next to the play area and down towards the byway. This is just showing a photo of there's an entrance into the site already. So these photos, this one is just showing towards Gibraltar Farm, down towards Ham Lane. This is the byway, and this is Elm Court, so it's just across the application site. These are taken along the byway and looking towards Gibraltar Farm and Elm Court again. And top three photos are looking across the site towards Ham Lane. And this is the byway that goes through the site and then on towards the future Lidsyn development. And this is south of the site towards the Lawswood Estate. Again, across the site towards the Lidsyn development. And around here is near where the access is coming into the site. So if you look at the photos here and these one, this is roughly where the access will be coming in. Sorry. This is the part of Northdane Way which is blocked off currently, and this is an existing, well, it was a roadway but it's become very overgrown, so this will be the new and approved access into the site. This is a site-wide master plan. Two house builders are developing the site, which operate under one developer. So you've got Red Row, who are developing east of the site, and Barrett developing west of the site. And they're providing 450 dwellings with a range of 1 to 5 bedrooms. Along here, they'll be providing a 15-metre buffer to the ancient woodland. The access to the site will obviously be off Northdane, but this is approved as part of the outline, and then as it ends at the ancient woodland, it'll come into the development site. This is the main play space, and you've got a lot of usable open space around the development. Affordable unit location, there's 113 affordable homes to be provided, and that's on the Barrett development area. They're identified on the drawing as pink circles, and they're provided in clusters amongst the market housing. So you've got some here, along here, down here, and then down through here. Materials and boundary plans. So for the hard surfacing for the roads, the hatched area shows the block paved, the white is tarmac, and the footpaths of the dwellings and to the front of the properties would be paving slabs. There is a condition for further details and materials to be submitted. Moving on to the front elevations of the dwellings. So these are the red road dwellings. They just show the different house types and the different materials. Same again, different house type, different materials. And this one shows the garages proposed. And this is the barrack dwelling, so the front elevations. Again, it shows the elevations as well as the different material types. So this is an L-shaped block located centrally within the site. And these are the flat blocks as well as the garages and the flat over garage. It shows some street scenes. So the top two are street scenes from within the Red Rose site, and the bottom three are street scenes from in the Barrack development site. And these are the northeastern open space. So these slides are just put in really just to show the open space areas within the site and to show that they're usable. So they're suds basins, but they're also shallow enough to be usable. So the sections show where it can be used. Same again, central open space. So this area just shows that it's a dual use. It can be used for amenity purposes as well as suds basins. Northwestern open space. So this one is suds basin, has steeper sides and would provide for like a mountain bike route with jumps within it. And then the Dry Valley North open space. Again, it shows the sections and shows how it's a usable space and the landscaping. And this is the south open space. So this one's the eastern boundary, and this just shows where the development will end. And then you'll have the landscape buffer before you get to the agricultural land, which is currently there, which is the future Lids-in development site. And this is a primary street, so it just shows a cross section, showing the dwellings either side, the footpath, the carriageway, and the rain garden. This is showing the central play space, which is located adjacent to the future Lids-in development and the byway. This slide shows the location of the links into the future Lids-in development. So they're circled on the top one where they are, and then the bottom one show more focused images of the links through. And circled is the anticipated area that would facilitate a roundabout to be provided for the vehicle link towards the future Lids-in development. So overall, it's considered that the development provides a good layout, mix of house designs, open space and landscaped areas, affordable housing and future occupier amenity. And the application is recommended for approval as set out within the officer's report and supplementary agenda, and as amended by the alterations to the condition 1 I mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeleine. Now go over to Ward Member Councillor Wildey, who has 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you and good evening. If we went back to when this site was first proposed, it only got approved after going to appeal at Secretary of State because it was 450 houses in the middle of the valley. If it went for approval now, it would have the Lidsing site, the East Hill 850, the 90 houses up Gleaming Wood. So you're getting on to this site is going to be surrounded by at least 3,000 houses, and if other people have their way, even more. So I think everything to do with this site should be refused. Now, I understand the committee would have problems with that. So also think this application should be postponed because there are certain things that I think should be in a report and haven't been. On page, which I've now lost, you have all the residents' reasons, 328 by memory, that reasons that they did not want this application to go ahead the way it is. Well, there was also a petition, the largest that Medway's ever had, over 10,000 people, and that was only one petition. There were others on different parts of Capstan Valley. That's not mentioned in here. Now, I think 10,000 people, even if it goes back to when this site was first proposed, needs to be at least mentioned. The big, health and safety area not covered in here is a landfill site. I don't know if the officer could show the outline of where the landfill site was, but during the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, I believe, they were digging out dirt as quickly as they could near this site, burying you don't know what. Asbestos was quite prevalent at the time, so there was so much buried that is now just covered up with dirt, very close to this site, which is never mentioned. I've asked about this before, and I've never seen a report on it, and I find that would be very worrying if I was to buy one of them houses and found out later. So I also think the least you should do is have a condition that the house buyers are made aware of where the landfill site was and what may or may not have been buried there. Which is a very minor point, but you have houses that are not of standard. Now, if I was on this committee, I wouldn't care how few that are not up to standard, and the report does say they are not up to standard, being built. This report should at least be paused until that's rectified. Now, I don't care how, by how many metres that they are substandard. If it's only 2 inches, I feel houses should be built to the minimum standard, and I don't really think very much of the minimum standard. So I would like this committee, A, to refuse this application, which I must admit I don't really expect you to do, but I do expect you to pause it and to look at the issues I've raised. And if I can go back to, if the officer can say the outline of the landfill area, which happened over 40 years going back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wildy. And now open the floor to members. Councillor Gilbourne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, all members have read that this application's been going on for some time, nearly 9 years now, and it's one that residents in Hempstead, Lordswood, everyone around Capstan Valley in particular, never wanted to see come forward anyway. But we're in a position now where we have what it is, and we have a reserved matters application to look at. And looking through what's presented, my concern I share with the ward councillor that particularly on the Barratt, on some of their designs are actually below the national standard, and I can't see why as a council we can't insist that all development has to meet the minimum standard. I know they said that it's only 1 or 2 properties, but even so we should exceed the minimum standard on all applications. And the other thing about the Barratt homes themselves, they are obviously looking different than the Red Row, but it's important, I think, that we have something that's appropriate for the site. And I'm not happy that the facades and things are as good as they could be. And now I don't know whether we can do anything about that. But in terms of the character of the area, they just seem too, substandard. The other thing about the application, which we had when we had the planning previews a couple of months ago, was wanted to see access from the side onto Ham Lane through to Elm Court, because pedestrian access would be very helpful there, but I can't see anything within the plan that's addressed that. And I'm just worried more people would have to walk around where there aren't any pavements at the moment, if they wanted to get through to Elm Court. But of course, the big thing, as you can see from the very first picture, that all that white space will be lost to development, both with the Lidsing plan for 2,500 homes within Maidstone Borough Council, but also the development within the emerging local plan. So all that space will be lost, and it will just be developed. And at the same time, one little correction that should be made, it talks about this is land, and they talk about it, Gibraltar Farm, Hempstead, Gillingham, but it's not, it's definitely Lordswood, because that's why it's in the Lordswood ward. It's not in the Hempstead and Wigmore ward. And I think that needs to be addressed, because it's very much seen as a Lordswood development, with a lot of the things in the planning application originally about focusing people to use the schools in Lordswood, the shopping centre in Lordswood, and of course with the North Daneway extension, it's all Lordswood based rather than Hempstead based, and I think that needs to be made clearer. And the final thing was just what Maidstone Borough Council put in there, almost like they wanted to object to it because they didn't think there was enough provision in there for the actual link road through to the Lidsing development. And I think even within this plan, it just seems that there's a circle of where the proposed roundabout would be. But I do have some sympathy with Maidstone to think, well, that should be included now, even though we know the landowner is the same landowner for this area as it is for the rest of Lidsing. But at the same time, I think it would be very helpful if Barratt Redrock could get that designed and put in place, before anything starts. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone want to come back on the points raised yet, or? No. Okay, Councillor Golding was next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very torn on this because I've been a firm believer for a long time now that we haven't built enough homes here in Medway for our people, probably go back 40 or 50 years, and we do have an extreme shortage of homes. This will provide another 450 homes, which will be a substantial contribution towards that deficit. But as Councillor Wildy has said, this and all the other developments along the Clapston Valley have been deeply unpopular with the local residents. And I think he's right in that those residents' fears should be recognised. And one of the most important ways that we as a planning authority have of making these developments a little bit more acceptable for the people who've got to put up with all the disturbance of the development is the use of 106 monies. When I look at the report for the 106, which is attached to the original application, there is not one single penny of that 106 money for sports and recreation going to Lordswood. Not one single penny. I really quite gobsmacked when I read that report. It is, unbelievable. What makes it even more unbelievable is the council owns a leisure centre that is just the other side of the strip of ancient woodland from this development. It's only 100 yards away from this development is the Lordswood Sports and Leisure Centre, and yet, according to the officers, not one penny should go to that. I find that very, very strange indeed. this area will require, with its huge increase of population, as Councillor Wildey mentioned, it's not, discussing this one for 450, but the other end of the North Downway, East Hill, it's 850. This area is going to have a huge, well, it will have a huge increase in population, and that population will require facilities for sport and recreation. And for not having that monies allocated to within the area, it is to me just staggering beyond belief. So I would request that officers please try and alter that situation. I think if Redrow and Barrett's were written to and asked if the monies that were allocated to go to Hook Meadow, the Great Lines access from the centre of Chatham, whilst those all may be very good things to do, they are not going to make any difference to the huge effect that is going to have on the quality of life of the existing residents of Alderslade, or indeed the need for the extra facilities because of the huge increase in population. So I would like the officers, please, to recommend from tonight that is done. I think my colleague, Councillor Gorman, has a point about the quality of some of the housing proposed. The Redrow properties look very nice, they look of a good quality, but they're the same as they would put it anyway. And this is still on the edge of a rural location. But there's no acknowledgement that this is actually, a greenfield site in open countryside at the moment. Those houses are just a standard, and there's no effort to fit in with the Kentish vernacular. And I have to say the Barrett houses are even worse. I mean, the Redrow ones that we've had built here in Medway, I will say of quite a good quality. But the Barrett ones here, I don't think are of very good quality. But probably, I don't think we these days have much chance of getting that changed. But I think it should be acknowledged that in future developments, there should be at least some acknowledgement of how these developments are located. They are located in what is now open countryside. And that should be reflected in the designs. And I must say I'm a little bit disappointed to see those house types this evening, and not seen it. And also, as Councillor Gilman did mention, when we had this at a pre-planning meeting, having an access through to Elm Court was requested, and nothing's been done about that. And I'm disappointed because there are shopping facilities there, and I'm sure that the people there that run that facility, it is a little bit more than a garden centre. There's quite a lot of other bits and pieces there as well. And surely it would be far more sustainable for people to have easy access by foot or bike to go to Elm Court and not have to get into their cars and drive down to Hempstead Valley or wherever they want to go and do their shopping. So I think that point that was made on that night, they noted it and then seemed to have ignored it. But I would like officers, please, to go back on that, please. Overall, I've got to say, yes, it is a bit disappointing. It's not what we would have really liked, but we've got to accept where we are. And, what is quite frightening is 450 homes on this development is just 27.5% of what we're supposed to build every year. Which gives us an idea of the magnitude of the task if we're there, which I think is actually impossible, but this does help a bit, and hopefully that when it's built, hopefully it will provide good quality homes for the people of Medway. who desperately need them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Dave Harris, did you want to comment on that?
Chair, thank you very much. I have some sympathy with Councillor Wildey's and residents' concerns about this site. In my entire time in Medway, this is probably the most disappointing decision I've ever seen. It was a field in the middle of fields. And I was still very, very surprised at the appeal decision. But as Councillor Galvin has said, we are where we are. An inspector took the view then and would do so even more now in terms of our housing land supply position and housing delivery point of view, which he said outweighed the landscape harm here, and the significant landscape harm. So this is reserved matters application. What I would say is, in terms of the landfill site, it is a distance from that. The landfill issue is more of an issue for the East Hill application and was addressed in that submission and isn't necessary for this one. In addition to that point about circumstances being different, because of Lidsing and because of our local plan, I don't think Lidsing would have come forward if it hadn't been for this appeal decision. The fact that Lidsing is coming forward now means is a result of this. So the fact that and I understand Councillor Wildey's point and his frustrations at this totally. The fact that Lidsing is coming forward is not a reason for this not to come forward. It's a reserved matters application anyway. Picking up the number of points that Councillor Gilbourne and Councillor Galvin have made. Section 106 money, completely agree with you, Councillor Galvin, and you did, without predetermining at all, you did mention it to me before this committee started. I had an opportunity to speak to the Barratt planning consultant before the meeting. They've agreed that we can look at changing where the money goes. The money we've got already in the section 106, but re-looking at where it goes for sports, so it could go to Lordswood. Their point to me was, providing it's no additional asks, which we're not, and providing it goes to a site which is related to development, which clearly Lordswood would do. So they're happy with that. So we will work with them further, maybe on a deed of variation on that. In relation to Elm Court, that's a really good point. We don't want any vehicular access, other than maybe an emergency one, onto Ham Lane. But you'll see on the plan here that there is a pedestrian access onto Ham Lane opposite Elm Court. What we need to do, and what we will do, is talk to the owners of Elm Court, because there is a vehicular access there, which they keep closed, as Councillor Gilbourne and yourself know, Councillor Galvin. So if we can persuade them, the owners of Elm Court, to open that up for pedestrians, because there'll be 450 potential customers here, I would have thought they will be open to a discussion. So that's a sensible one. We'll take that forward with the owners of Elm Court. In relation to Maidstone Council, I think it's a bit rich, their comments on to us, but I'm putting that aside. What we have done, as Councillor Gilbourne has said, the landowners of Lidsing are the same ones who are selling this land to Barratt and Redrow, and they have an agreement to provide that roundabout that Madeline has talked about, which will link through to Lidsing. They know it's important to their Lidsing development. That's why it's part of that contract with Barratt and Redrow, so will be delivered. Finally, Chair, in relation to design, I do understand the points made on that. I think, as Councillor Galvin has said, we do know what Redrow deliver. What they've delivered out at Halling, what they've delivered out at High Halstow. We know their product. It's pretty good. It is fairly sensitive to rural locations. Halling and High Halstow, rural locations. Barratt's with less experience of. There is a site at St Mary's Island, and you can spot it straight away as you go around there. You know the Barrett's development, and I have spoken to the MD of Barrett's and said I don't want anything like that ever again in Medway, and he has assured me that their standards have significantly improved since then. But Madeline and myself have had a conversation, and we feel that while we recognise your points about the two-dimensional plans that you've seen today, the way forward on this is to get the detailing right, to get the materials right. And if you look at some sites out at Who, and you can see a volume house builder next to an SME, you can see the difference quality materials make. What we need to do here is to say we're not just agreeing a red brick, we want to know what red brick and the detailing of the weatherboarding and the detail of the render and so on and the tiles, so that we can get that quality. And I think if we get the materials right, the development will look fine. Certainly they have worked really hard on the landscaping, working with my team and with Madeline and with our SUDS officers, and I'm really pleased with what Madeline has shown here in terms of that landscaping, how it deals with the ancient woodland. So I think that's exceptional. They need to put that in fairly early. They need to get it right. A little bit similar to the presentation members had with Green Blue Urban recently. You get that right, it adds value to the development. So we'll be making sure that what they proposed, which is really good, is actually delivered. So hopefully that's helpful. Councillor Galvin, Councillor Gilbourne and Councillor Wildey. Thank you.
Thank you. Now go over to Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure members here are aware that Medway is the largest urban conurbation in the whole of Kent. We've got just over 300,000 residents. And every time I hear one of my colleagues or from you that we're building houses for our local people, can I tell you that's rubbish? I've got 2 Esquire developments and a Red Road development in my ward. 80% of them, come with me, I'll show you. I've spoken to them. 80% of them have all moved in from outside of Medway. So we're not building houses for local people. And when we have developments like this, why aren't we taking into account what's going to happen in our neighbouring areas? I'm sure Councillor Field is sitting over there panicking like crazy what Gravesham's about to do to him. So, you know, as a planning committee, we're not looking forward in the future. We have got no blue sky thinking of what's actually going to happen. And as for a certain developer wanting to build houses that are substandard, let's face it, and let's be honest, we've all seen that expose programme of where that developer was exposed to building the most shoddiest houses in Britain. In fact, 4 of them had to be purchased back off the owner and knocked down because they were so substandard. So when that comes forward for design and materials, I shall be scrutinizing that most very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Any other member? No? Okay, so now go over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I'll get your title right this time. In terms of the land south of Ham Lane, formerly Gibraltar Farm, Hempstead, Gillingham, move recommendation for approval as set out. Conditions 1 to 10 as in the report, condition 1 as amended by the supplementary agenda, and an additional condition 11 on materials, etc., as in the supplementary agenda. Note the officer's comments on air quality, etc., as also set out in the supplementary agenda. I so move, Chair. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, just going to go over to Dave Harris.
Oh, sorry. Madeline, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, sorry, I asked if we could just amend some plans on the supplementary agenda. So it wasn't on the supplementary agenda, but I just mentioned it. I can't actually find my notes. Say that again, you say it.
Sorry, just Councillor Jones, if you take on board the additional changes made by the officer as part of the presentation in the move in the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that advice, as well as what's on the supplementary agenda, the additional changes made by the officer as part of the presentation, reference to plans, etc. I so move, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Right. Those for the application?
That's 11.
Those against? Okay, the application is therefore approved. Now we move on to agenda item 9, planning application for 130 High Street, Gillingham. Peter Hockney, service manager, will be presenting this application. So over to you, Pete.
Thank you, Chair. Let's just get through to that part of the presentation. Here we go. So this application relates to 130 High Street, Gillingham. Before I start the presentation, just draw members' attention to the supplementary agenda, which includes a statement that was submitted by the applicant's agent on behalf of the applicant. I'll refer to some of that later in the presentation. You can see here the red line outlining the site. As I mentioned, it's on Gillingham High Street, and it's within the pedestrianised area that you can see from the aerial photograph. You can see the property here. It was formerly occupied by Holland and Barrett, who have vacated the premises. And here is the existing layout of the retail area with a rear service area. Now, the application is for the change of use of the property to, at ground floor level to a betting shop. And you can see the proposed layout here, typical of such establishments, with betting stations, the electronic betting booths, and the manned booth towards the end, with ancillary staff facilities towards the rear. The slide here in front of members shows the application site highlighted in green, and surrounding the site you can see the red coloured properties are betting shops and amusement arcades. The yellows are additional sui generis uses, so sort of other uses of their own class, but not part of betting or amusement arcades. So, for example, the corner unit there is a public house, with the blue elements being retail. The grey are vacant units, which obviously the application site is vacant at the moment. Now, in terms of the appellant's statement, they consider that there should be a separation between betting shops and amusement arcades in terms of our assessment, and rely on a different local plan policy in that regard. And they also state that inspectors at Peel have considered that they should be dealt with separately. Whilst we note that viewpoint, we're also aware of other appeal decisions where inspectors have considered them together because they restrict uses by certain people because they are over 18 premises. So they exclude sort of younger teenagers, they exclude families, which obviously a retail unit wouldn't. So we are recommending that this application be refused on the basis of an over-concentration of such uses in the immediate area. And you can see that in terms of the rule of thumb that we've used, members will be unsurprised that it's the sort of 10% element. There's currently 4 such gambling establishments within the 100-metre radius. This would take it to 5 which would take it from 9% to 11%. We think that would be an over-concentration. We also note that the Gillingham Town Centre manager has raised concerns and objections in relation to the vitality and viability of the High Street, and we are recommending refusal on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Now go over to Ward Member Councillor MacDonald, who has 5 minutes to speak when he's ready.
Thank you, Chair. And the last time you'll see me tonight, I promise. I want to speak very strongly in support of the officer recommendation to refuse this application, members, because tonight we aren't simply deciding what happens to one empty shop. We are deciding what sort of high street we want Gillingham to become. As ward councillors, we spend week after week working in this high street. We hear from residents and traders, we deal with antisocial behaviour, crime, litter and fly tipping, and we see firsthand the consequences of deprivation and inequality. And at the same time, we are working incredibly hard to turn Gillingham around. We are investing in CCTV, improving cleaning and working with the police, businesses and the Gillingham Task Force and of course our community. There are people who genuinely believe in this town and are fighting for its future. So what message do we send if in the middle of all that work, we approve another gambling premises? The applicant talks about investment around £300,000 in fitting out this premises. I welcome investment in Gillingham, but not every investment is regeneration. Simply filling an empty shop doesn't automatically improve a high street. We have to ask what that use contributes to the community around it. And this is a community experiencing significant deprivation and health inequality. And this isn't about being anti-business either. It isn't about whether we personally approve or disapprove of gambling. This is about knowing when enough is enough. Residents have spoken, 12 letters of objection and a petition with 47 signatures from our local MP in the Shire of Calm. And our professional planning officers have reached a clear conclusion. Another gambling premises would contribute to an overall concentration of gambling uses, harm the retail function of the centre and have an unacceptable impact on the health and well-being of a community vulnerable to gambling-related harm. That should carry considerable weight this evening, members. The applicant argues there are only 3 other betting offices amongst 172 town centre units. But residents don't walk through Gillingham calculating percentages and planning use classes. They experience the community environment around them only. Betting shops, adult gaming centres and other gambling uses and vacant units. And they experience all of that alongside the social challenges Gillingham is already trying to overcome. We cannot have 2 competing visions for this town. We cannot sit around the Gillingham Task Force table talking about regeneration, aspiration, health and reducing inequality, and then come into planning committee and make decisions which take us in the opposite direction. These 2 things simply never and do not fit together. Every shop unit is also an opportunity for a retailer, a cafe, a service, a small business, or something different which broadens the offer of our high street in Gillingham. Yes, this unit is vacant today, but planning permission can shape our high street for years to come. And we should never sacrifice our long-term ambition for Gillingham simply because somebody is prepared to occupy an empty unit tomorrow. And importantly, Chair, this isn't just sentiment. There are clear planning grounds for refusal. Officers identified conflict with policy R17 of the Medway local plan alongside emerging policies S16, S19 and T27. Concerning healthy communities, town centre vitality and the concentration impact of gambling uses. And they also identified conflict with paragraphs 90 and 96 of the MPPF concerning healthy, inclusive communities and supporting healthy lifestyles. So there is a planning case for refusal, there is a regeneration case for refusal, and there is a health and wellbeing case for refusal. And there is a community asking us to refuse it. Members, we have spent years saying we want better for Gillingham and our town centres, and tonight we have an opportunity to prove that we mean it. Let's back our residents, let's back the regeneration of our high streets, and let's back the professional recommendation before you this evening. Gillingham deserves better than another gambling premises being presented as regeneration. For those reasons, Chair, I certainly and strongly urge members to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Now over to members. Any member? Councillor Peake.
Whenever I hear about an application for business to open up, my initial reaction is to support it because we need enterprise and we need growth, but not at any cost. Now, Councillor MacDonald has outlined so well, thank you for that, all the reasons why this application should be refused. Whilst we want to see regeneration, it cannot be at any cost. We need a guide far better than this, so I will be voting with the refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there's are strong grounds for the refusal. First, on planning grounds, it detracts from the vitality of the shopping area. It doesn't enhance it, but also there is very strongly the public health side as well. I think it must have been some 10 years ago, we had a task group on the effect of gambling on Medway's residents, and that actually got national recognition, which is very good. But I do remember, interestingly at the time, that Councillor Maple made the comment that the use of fixed odds betting terminals, which this proposal includes, he described as the crack cocaine of betting. And for once, I will strongly agree with Vince on that. These just suck money out of people's pockets. People who, by and large, can't afford it, and then that the addiction leads to family breakdowns, and it goes on and on and on. And it's not a matter of trying to impose one's values onto other people. It is a fact with these effects, and I also want to see vibrant, pleasant town centres in all parts of Medway, and this sort of application does not add to that. So I will be very happy to join other members in refusing this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other member? No, we'll I'll be going with the officer's recommendation for refusal. Good points raised there. So now go over to Councillor Jones, Vice Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chair. 130 High Street, Gillingham. Move refusal, one ground as set out in the report. I so move. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Second. Okay, those for officer's recommendation of refusal.
That's 13, Chair.
The application is therefore refused. So now we move on to agenda item 10, which is 23 Pump Lane, which Peter Huckney will be presenting. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a plot within Pump Lane. You can see outlined in red there, and it had a bungalow on site, which you can see from these photos, has subsequently been removed. In that regard, the proposal is for a replacement dwelling to replace the property on site. You can see the block plan there of the existing or pre-existing property, and the proposed replacement dwelling on the right-hand side. The elevations here show again the pre-existing elevations of the demolished bungalow, and here the proposed elevations of the replacement dwelling. You can see that the proposal here includes accommodation over 2 floors, with the majority of the first floor accommodation within the roof slope of the property. Again, here you can see the street scenes. So you've got bungalows either side with accommodation within the roof slope, and this one again with accommodation within the roof slope located there. You can also see from here that there will be a gap of a metre from either boundary to ensure that there is sufficient spacing between the new dwelling and the proposed neighbours. The eaves height has been kept at a low level to ensure that it would not dominate either property in terms of impact on neighbours, but also in terms of the street scene and the general character of the area. In terms of the floor plans, you can see again here the ground floor plan where the majority of the accommodation is to be accommodated, and then on the first floor plan you can see that there would be 2 bedrooms at first floor. From the floor plans, one would look at them and see and wonder why, in terms of the size of the properties, size of the bedrooms, sorry, why they are so large. But if I, as I say, take members back to the elevations, and again you can see sort of probably where the head height would be essentially only the central portion of the new dwelling. So although this space here would be accessible, it wouldn't be somewhere that you'd be able to stand up. So that's why they look sort of over large on floor plan, but in terms of the usable space, they would be smaller, but they would still meet the required standards within that headspace element. So we are recommending that permission be granted for the replacement dwelling, subject to a Section 106 agreement securing self-build in order to achieve the biodiversity net gain exemption and the conditions that are set out on the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And just to confirm, this would normally have been determined under delegated powers, but it's here because of the amount of objections.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, any member? No. I personally can't see anything wrong with this, therefore I will be going with the officer's recommendations. So over to you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Recommend approval. First, with a Section 106 self-build, that point in relation to the Section 106 of self-build property, and secondly, on the grounds of condition 1 to 11 as set out in the report. I so move. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Those for the officer's recommendation for approval?
That's 13.
The application is therefore approved. Now on to agenda item 11, performance report, which Dave Harris, Chief Planning Officer, will be presenting this report. So over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, first draw members' attention to page 105 and 106 of your report. You'll see some things which will coming down the road to us. First is in relation to a new MPPF. Was a consultation on that last year, end of last year, beginning of this year. It was drafted. It was ready to come out, but obviously we've got a new Prime Minister now, and it's just been held back to check that it's going to be in accordance with how he wishes planning policy to progress. So we're expecting that early September time now. Then moving on, planning and infrastructure bill. The planning fees will go up again in later this year, which is good news. There will also be the possibility for planning authorities to set their own fees with local government reorganisation, though I will be discussing it with my counterparts at Gravesham and Dartford, but it's likely that we won't propose setting our own fees at this stage. We'll leave that for the new authority. But the good news is that planning fees will be going up anyway in December. In terms of compulsory purchase changes, hopefully that will help us moving forward with, as Councillor MacDonald has said, some of our regeneration town centre empty high street properties enable those quickly. Then, members, there is the reform of planning committees. And I'm looking at Councillor Colvin because I know you feel very strongly about this. Secondary legislation is now in place. That will take place or come into force as of the 31st of October. There'll be a report coming to this committee in September as to how we're going to deal with the governance in relation to that. So one thing we do know is that planning committee maximum size will be 13 in number. So the planning committee will need to reduce slightly. There will be Schedule 1 type applications, which will always be delegated. And then there'll be Schedule 2 applications, which require to go through a gateway process, where there will be a presumption that they'll be delegated. But it will be subject to that gateway and considerations by the Chief Planning Officer and the Chair of Planning Committee, or in my absence and the Chair's absence, the Development Manager and the Vice Chair, which will trigger certain applications to come to committee. Now, we need to make that more objective rather than subjective, otherwise it's setting myself and the Chairman up to be criticised, and we don't want that. So we're working on that. Again, I'll be working as close as I can with our colleagues at Gravesham and Dartford, so we'll be able to have a smooth transition to the new authority. But as I said, that will come to Planning Committee in September, reports on that. We continue to work on the new spatial development strategies, regional planning coming back, which is great news. It helps us to look at regional planning, where growth should be, with what infrastructure is necessary for that. Although they haven't confirmed the areas for these, pretty sure it will be Kent and Medway, which makes total sense. And then the planning boards themselves will be at the moment made up of representatives of Kent County Council and Medway Council, and then in 20 months' time will be made up of representatives from the 4 new unitary councils. Unless we get some form of devolution and mayoral authority, in which case it will be a mayoral authority. Members, you'll be aware that we're progressing with the local plan. We start, we're expecting what we call MIQs, matters, issues and questions, to come from the 2 inspectors next week. We will then have a month to go through them and respond to them. And then we start the first examinations in September, which will look at our spatial strategy. And then the second examinations, or part of the examinations, will be in November, which will look at those specific site allocations. We have, which is usual, as members know, have had an exchange of letters with the planning inspectors, where they asked some initial questions. That was usual, very commonplace. Actually, it was very light compared to what other authorities have seen. We answered those questions. We needed to do a little bit of extra work in terms of consultation on some additional information, do some further work on Greenbelt, some further work on Gypsy and Travellers, which we have done, including call for sites on Gypsy and Travellers. And as I said, we will get those examinations later this year, and then move towards main modifications and adoption in the first half of next year is what's anticipated. Members will know that our Developer Contributions Guide supplementary planning document was adopted in June Cabinet, which is great news as well, because that links to our infrastructure funding statement and helps us to get significantly more contributions for infrastructure related to our developments. So moving forward in terms of the general performance report, applications coming in, applications determined, pretty consistent there. But what is great news is the performance of Pete and the team. 100% of major applications there in time. Looking at minor, again, 100% there. Others slightly below 100% in the 90s, late 80s, 90s there, which is great, still massively above the government target. Then looking at fees, I was a little bit worried about fees, probably still am, because we had a slow start to the year, beginning to pick up a little bit now, but we need some big applications coming in. Ideally, some big applications linked to sites that we want to support, because if we don't support them, then we go to appeal and there's a cost of appeals. This shows how we compare to other authorities in the country, and you can see we're outperforming the average of other planning authorities in the country quite significantly. And then that's planning applications decided in time. Then looking at this, just showing percentages of applications granted, that should be a high figure because there is a presumption in approval, so 91% there is good. Doesn't mean to say that we find everything acceptable. Clearly we don't, you can see from the committee tonight, but around about 90% is a good figure to aim for. The next one is we need to try and keep it low, we want to determine applications within the statutory time period, so 18%. You can see is a really good figure compared to our other authorities in Kent and Medway. Major development within 13 weeks, difficult one, because the major applications we deal with invariably have Section 106 agreements, and that will immediately take them out of the 13 weeks. So 31% still good. Non-major, we want that to be high, 82% is good. And then household development, again, we want that to be high, 94%, again, very good. Appeals. It shows number of appeal decisions received, and this is allowed dismissed. So you can see that's the percentage of allowed, percentage of dismissed. I have a target, or this committee has a target of trying for no more than 30% allowed. We've gone slightly above that in this quarter, but myself and Pete, we analyse all appeal decisions received to see if we're doing anything inconsistent, to see if we're making any wrong decisions which are not being supported, which would cost this authority. And we report them quarterly to this committee, and that's the next report on this agenda. So that's other work in terms of prior approvals. Number of units under construction. As has been discussed a number of times tonight, we've got a housing target of delivery, which is over 1,600. You can see we've only rarely got above that figure in terms of the number of units under construction. But when we look at number of units completed, we've never got up to 1,600. The best we got was 23, 24 at 1,300. So we're always working at a deficit. Difficulties in of the economy in the last few years. The building market is very, very sensitive, and if you have wars, which there are a few of them going around, that creates some uncertainty in the market, and immediately we see a dip in delivery and completions. Enforcement notices, Pete and the team doing some amazing work there. Three enforcement, Section 215 notices served, enforcement notice served, and some requisitions for information, 330 notices served as well. But what we've got here, the blue is the new complaints received, the orange is the existing cases, and Pete and the enforcement officers are working really hard to try and find ways to reduce the number of those existing cases. So hopefully we'll see that figure coming down slightly in future quarters. TPO applications, that's dealt with by my team, currently using a consultant. But with the budget position as it is, and with having recently, or relatively recently, appointed to a vacant tree officer post, we will stop using the tree consultant as of the end of August, and that tree work will be done by the new officers. But we need to make sure that performance doesn't dip to where it was prior to starting to use the consultant. Lead Local Flood Authority, that's us, that's Gabby and Daniel. As you can see, they do an incredible job in terms of responding to conditions, environmental impact assessments, major applications, pre-apps, minors. Phenomenal performance. And that just gives some background to that. So then going on to complaints and compliments, members, we know that we get complaints because someone is always unhappy with planning decisions, but you'll see from the report we also get a number of compliments. I'm so proud of my team. We have amazing officers. Even when they're giving people bad news, they try to do it in a timely way and in an appropriate way. So we get a lot of compliments as well. So, Chairman, that's the performance report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dave, for that report. A couple of quick things. When the planning team is reorganised, will we have the opportunity to be presented with the new MPF and also get a copy of it?
Absolutely. The chair has said to me that when it comes out, she wants me to do a presentation, me and Pete to do and the legal officer to a presentation to the planning committee and any other members that are interested and answer any questions on it. So absolutely, I'm very happy to circulate a link to it as well, Chair.
Thank you. And in addition to that, you mentioned that a slight change in the way the planning applications are going to come forward to the planning committee. But will the planning committee still get a full list of all the applications coming in? And if they wish to call something in, they have the ability to do so?
Right, good and bad news there, Chair. The planning committee, or all members, will still continue to get the weekly list of planning applications. All members in this committee will get a list of those applications which are determined under delegated powers and why they're dealt with under delegated powers. From what I can see of the new legislation, there will be no call-in ability for members.
Yeah. And then finally, Chairman, or Chair, sorry, the TPOs. As you are no doubt aware, we had TPOs on trees at Christmas Lane and they all got chopped down. What was the results of that and any action taken against the developer for doing that?
Sorry, Chair, where was that?
At Christmas Lane.
Christmas Lane at High Houston?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of trees being chopped down at Christmas. Yeah. TPO trees being chopped down.
5 oak trees were chopped down.
No, there was a discussion in terms of the Red Row application out there where they were showing the road widening where trees could be removed. We worked very hard with them on that to protect those trees.
Yeah, but we failed, unfortunately. So I just wondered what action was taken against Red Road for that, because that road widening excuse never took place.
I'm still unaware of that, Chair, so I'll investigate and I'll come back to this committee and Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you.
Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I hope the Vice Chair will take on board that once again we've got a really outstanding set of performance statistics from our officers, and it's only right and proper that we as a committee should appreciate that. But I must say, you're absolutely right about my views on the way the planning legislation is going. I mean, for a government that has preached devolution and spreading control to a local level, it seems to be only on the basis if you can do that as long as you do as we tell you what to do. That's not devolution, that's not decentralisation, that is just keeping tight control from the centre. And hopefully sooner or later we'll get a change of government and we can argue for a much better system. And I hope the sooner that comes, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But also, the annual requirement now is 1,636. It's absolutely impossible. I mean, I don't know why we keep this pretense going. And as for building 1.5 million homes in the lifetime of this Parliament, that's pie in the sky. It's never ever going to happen for all the reasons that Dave Harris outlined and a few more as well. This seems to be just a total lack of appreciating what's happening in the real world. You can spout out these figures, that's what you've got to do, but it isn't going to happen. How we can jump through the hoops that are impossibly high is just totally ridiculous. So and that to me undermines any respect that I've got for central planning and control from Whitehall. We don't just need a number 10 in Manchester. We need another number 10 in Medway, that we can actually do things that are right for Medway and the people of Medway. And that's not happening, certainly under this government. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peake, did you want to come?
I'm just wondering how we got on to attacking the government due to this report. Quite bizarre. I'd rather follow up with the much more constructive comments made by Councillor Etheridge. So if there's no call-in, is there, not that I ever contemplate there ever being an occasion when I want to do this, but if there was something that I wanted to challenge, would there be any kind of available route for councillors to do that, even if it doesn't come to committee, way of challenging that maybe then could be circulated to the rest of the committee?
Chair, we'll explain that in the September report. It's a good question from Councillor Peake. The gateway procedure, where it would trigger to committee would be if there are, and I haven't got it in front of me, unfortunately, I should have done, but if there are economic, social, or environmental issues of significant importance, that could trigger it to committee. Or if the applications were significantly contrary to the development plan, that would trigger it to committee. So if we take, for instance, Gibraltar Farm on committee tonight, an outline application looking for the principle of that would come to this committee. Reserve matters, where the committee have already considered the principle, would be dealt with under delegated powers. But I'm very happy if members picking up a phone to me, if they go through a weekly list and they think, well, I'd like to know an idea of how a certain application would get on through the gateway process, very happy to speak to members. But in terms of explaining it a lot clearer, the report to committee in September will explain that.
Right, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm only saying this because I'm a bit concerned about the link between us as councillors, especially in very controversial areas where there's all these justified concerns, and they, all of us representing those residents, that ability to then come back to you. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Here's that link of continuity of, yes, we're here to represent you, so therefore we need to have the ability to have dialogue. That's why I asked the question.
Right, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on one point of view of the time of the evening, Chair, and that was the reforms of planning committees. I think it's important to recognise there was a consultation and we fed back to the consultation. If I remember rightly, we started an even lower base of possible numbers of committee members. We now have 13, which is an odd number and I think is manageable. On the other points that Councillor Galvin makes, I'll certainly refer to that when I'm moving the recommendations in terms of the appreciation for our staff employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? No, so now go over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
Oh, well, sooner than I thought. In terms of the performance report, certainly we were asked to note and consider it. We have done that, and I so move. I'd also very much like the Chief Planning Officer to relay to planning department employees the appreciation of the full committee on their performance, and I think that message needs to go, that the committee unanimously agreed, as I hope we will, that the staff performance needs recognition, and I so move. Cheers.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Is the report agreed? Agreed. So now we go on to agenda item 12, appeal decisions, where Dave Harris, Chief Planning Officer, will be presenting this report. Over to you, Dave.
Chair, thank you. As you know, members, we don't report all appeal decisions. What we report is, in terms of detail, are those ones where inspectors have made a different decision to us, i.e. allowed appeals, or when members have overturned an officer's recommendation, what the appeal decision is. So in relation to 33 Stopford Road, this was an HMO application. It was allowed. What the inspector said there was, in terms of the 2003 H7 policy, the application was contrary to it, but effectively was saying that the policy is old, the property was already a 6-bed HMO, so he gave very limited weight to that policy. He also said that an extra 2 people would not result in any harm to amenity or the street scene. Disappointingly, in relation to emerging policy H8 and communal areas and sizes of those, the inspector wasn't convinced on our arguments, and I'm really disappointed on that, regarding the communal space standards. I think it demonstrated an inconsistency by inspectors in terms of the weight to be given to emerging policy, but also the need for the people who live in these HMOs to have communal areas of a reasonable size. So I'm very disappointed with the inspector's decision on that one. Then the second one was regarding land at Featherby Road, opposite Bredgar Road. This was for a micro-energy storage unit. We refused it on the basis of its impact on trees and the root system. The inspector was simply not convinced by that argument and allowed the appeal. Burnt Oak Terrace was conversion of existing single-storey garage outbuilding roof, changing it from a mono-pitch to a dual pitch. The inspector said they're not creating a separate dwelling, it's of acceptable design, and there was no unacceptable harm or impact to neighbours. Got to say, looking through this, I think it was one of those balanced decisions. We could have gone either way of it, and the inspector went the way of an approval on it. And then we get to Kingswood Road. That's an HMO. Members, I won't go through that. We've discussed that case with the HMOs earlier today. But on that one, that was a member overturn, and we did further work, or Sam did further work in relation to the appeal, and the inspector agreed with members and dismissed that appeal. The other 2 things I want to mention, Chair, if it's okay, we've had 3 public inquiries recently. They were intensive. We've had the results on 2 of them. The first one was for Richborough, which is at Wainscott. That was an application for 800 homes. It was on a site which is not allocated in the emerging local plan. We've spent a considerable amount of money defending that appeal, around about £300,000. We appointed KCs. We appointed highway consultants working very closely with Steve. Oh, Steve's gone. Working very closely with Steve. We appointed landscape consultants and planning consultants as well. Their KC, as Councillor Turpin and Councillor Williams will probably attest to, because they sat and watched some of the inquiry, their KC was intensive. She cross-examined our consultants for 6 hours, the highways person and the planning person. They stood firm. They were really, really good. They stood firm through all that cross-examination. And the emerging decision, the inspector gave weight to the emerging local plan, which is fantastic news. He said that the work done on the emerging local plan, although it wasn't adopted, it clearly been done over several years, clearly was showing a spatial strategy which was supported by evidence, and therefore this site had clearly been, I'm using clearly again, had been shown not to be an appropriate or sustainable site for development. He agreed with our highways consultant and our landscape consultant and our planning consultant and gave them more credence than he gave Richborough's highways planning and landscape consultants. And that's despite the fact that their consultants were really good as well, but ours gave better arguments on the stand, and the inspector gave a lot of credibility to them and their evidence, and it was a great, really good decision. Then we came to the Gladman application, 240 homes to the west of Who. That was an appeal against non-determination. This planning committee determined not to object to the application in principle because it's an allocated site in the local plan, but wanted to make sure that we got a Section 106 agreement which was appropriate in terms of infrastructure delivery and also affordable homes. Because we didn't take a big part in the inquiry, it still cost me or my budget over £70,000 to be at the public inquiry. We had limited involvement though, because it's an allocated site, because we weren't objecting. The inspector gave limited weight to the local plan, but Gladman weren't arguing about the emerging local plan. What they were arguing was that we don't have a 5-year housing land supply and our housing delivery has been incredibly poor. The inspector accepted that point by Gladman. All parties accepted, so that was the council, Gladman, and the Rule 6 party accepted that the loss of the green field would be harmful. All parties agreed that, because if you're building on a greenfield site, it's going to be harmful, isn't it? But the inspector said that harm was outweighed by the housing need. Another good thing, though, was that the inspector, and Councillor Sands will be pleased with this, the inspector accepted that policy Who 8 of the neighbourhood plan should have significant importance, significant weight. And that's important because part of that Who 8 policy is about the strategic gap between Chatham Dean and Who. So although the inspector allowed this appeal, the third appeal that we're awaiting the decision on, as members will know, is a wimpy one, which is again further to the west of Who, but closing that gap between Who and Chatham Dean. And although it is an allocated site, it's allocated on the basis of a significant gap, which is what policy Who 8 asks for. And our argument with the inspector on the wimpy one is that Wimpy are not proposing a big enough gap. So we await that decision with interest. Finally, in relation to the appeal, Gladman were proposing 25% affordable homes. We said, no, the emerging local plan says 30%. The inspector agreed with us and has gone for 30%, so that's really good news. The inspector also agreed with every single one of our Section 106 asks as well. So although I'm looking at Councillor Sands and I know that he spoke against it, and I know that the ward councillors don't want to see the development, but the good thing is it's coming with the infrastructure. So not the news that you wanted, Councillor Sands, but we've got something. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any member? No, so I'll go over to Councillor Jones.
Again, Chair, I'm sure the committee would want to join with me in thanking officers for their hard work on these public inquiries. And we've been asked to note and consider the report, which I believe we have done. I so move. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Is the report agreed? Agreed. Then final planning application, section agenda item 13, section 106 agreement. Dave, just as
Chair, my voice is going, you'll be glad to hear. So this is for information. It's about Section 106 funding received in the quarter. Section 106 is signed, and also the Birdwise. Happy to answer questions. If I can't answer them tonight, I will come back to members. Thank
Any
you.
questions from members? No, over to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. The committee has noted and considered the report on Section 106, including the Birdwise. I so move.
Is that seconded? Yeah. Is the report agreed? Agreed. Thank you. That's the end of tonight's planning committee.